What's the dog's name?
Max. Hey, Janelle. What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking. Is he okay?
Wolfie's fine, honey. Wolfie's just fine.
Welcome to What's Wrong with Wolfie.
Greetings and welcome to What's Wrong with Wolfie, a retro podcast dedicated to the pop culture of the 80s, 90s and zeros. My name is Jason.
I'm Chris.
No Rich or Steve this time, but we are joined, luckily, by GamesMaster legend Mr Rik Henderson. Welcome to the Wolfie Pod, mate.
Your absolute pleasure. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you on. We've been a long time fan since the GamesMaster days, so to actually be able to interact with you one-on-one is very, very cool.
It's also to prove that I'm a real person and not just a Nicholas Linter stand-in.
I thought he was going to say, well, I should put a disclaimer actually these days, shouldn't we? When we have a guest on that, our guest is not AI generated.
And it's the I bit in that is definitely not.
Yeah, this is the real deal, the real Rik Henderson. So, welcome, mate. We do have a few Games Master questions to ask you, but also in this episode, we will be going through some of your favourite films, TV shows and video games, which is, I always kind of hate pitting this question to our guests because I know personally, like, it must be a really hard question to answer considering the amount of, like, gold there is out there to choose from. But I think that you've come up with some stellar answers and we look forward to diving into those a little bit later. But as I mentioned, we do have some Games Master questions. We can't have you on without asking you some. There will be no reference to the Dave Perry incident because that has all been said and done in the oral history and on many other podcasts. So if you're searching for answers to that, then please go and search elsewhere. We have much other stuff to discuss. And the first question, Rik, is like, if anyone is listening that doesn't know who you are you?
Right. Oh, wow. I essentially am Rik Henderson, most famous for GamesMaster Games World, famous Christmas TV ads of the 90s, which appeared on Channel 5 one year and then was repeated every single year for about 10 years.
Wow.
So that was quite good. I probably actually ended up on that more than I ended up on GamesMaster. But my background essentially is as a journalist, and how I got into GamesMaster in the first place is I actually started as a video games journalist in 1987-88. And then edited lots of video games magazines, worked for some of the famous ones like Computer and Video Games at times. But I've done an awful lot else since. I've been a sports editor. I've done so much. But I also produced a lot of the TV shows. I didn't produce on GamesMaster, but I did produce the TV series Games World. I've produced the TV series Virtual World of Sport, which nobody ever saw. I then went to the BBC and did 2 shows that nobody ever saw. So in fact, I've done an awful lot of output that only I have seen. I'm like an anti-YouTuber. So, yeah, hopefully that gives a thing. And at the moment, I currently work for a website called PocketLint.com, which is a technology and video games website. Really good fun and lets me just pretty much do what I want.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of your day job at the moment, Rik, because obviously I follow you on Twitter and like some of the stuff that you get to play with looks very much good fun, and it must be quite fun for you to be able to play with the latest technology tech and then just write words about it.
Hugely. The stuff that I get through the door and also the stuff that I go to see. And I am in a very fortunate position with my job in the fact that I get to fly around the world, or at least I have done over the last few years. The pandemic kind of put a kibosh on that for a bit.
Yeah.
You know, I've been to most countries I've ever wanted to be to just to look at some technology. But and also sort of like cock about when you're not actually having to do something.
Sure.
But there's also things like I get to see the latest televisions. I have all of the video games consoles. I've reviewed pretty much every single video games console since the Sega Mega Drive. So so I've seen everything like that. I see phones and tablets and cars. Yeah, it's a great job and really good fun. And the thing is, and it never gets tired because technology is constantly moving, constantly shifting. And it's like you said at the top of the show, artificial intelligence. I mean, who saw that? Who saw it coming so quickly and so powerfully? And the last few weeks have just been incredible for AI.
It feels like at the beginning of this year that there was nothing being mentioned about that, and like Chat GTP or whatever it's called, and AI art that's being generated. And then all of a sudden, we're only in the middle of February at the time of recording, and it's just all over the place.
Yeah. Previously, we were having arguments with real people over chat lines on customer services, and now we're having raging arguments with artificial intelligent customer services. It's amazing.
That's one thing. Like the AI art, it blew up sort of late last year, didn't it? Sort of August to October or so, it became this massive thing. Everyone was doing it. Had the DALL-E Mini came out, and then they were changing the algorithm a little bit, and then there's another generator called Midjourney, isn't there now?
Yeah,
that is doing some amazing stuff. And again, I'm not a sponsor, not plugging them, but I'm a fan of the Corridor Digital channel on YouTube, and they are visual effects artists that kind of refuse to work in Hollywood because of really bad experiences. So they do their own little short films, and they do independent stuff for like advertising agencies and video games. They've done a lot for Halo recently, and but they've been experimenting with AI algorithms and coding, and some of the stuff that they pushed out is phenomenal. It looks hand painted. It is that good, and even they're worried that, if in 20 seconds a program can produce this artwork or this apparent CG render of something, then what does that hold for the future of visual effects?
One thing that I wrote the other day about it, the Kindle ebook store is absolutely being inundated with books written by ChatGPT and illustrated by things like DALL-E.
Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. I mean, there is a moral issue about that if you're not transparent about it. But an awful lot of them say this genuinely was written by ChatGPT, and they're actually making some money out of it. And I do think it's going to get to a point where it becomes a very normal part of our lives.
And that's quite scary, considering people like us. We've all seen Terminator 2, and Skynet and everything, and I'm sure the generations of now obviously don't hold that in the back of their brain a little tiny bit, because they may not have seen the film, but for people like us who have and have grown up with the Terminator films, it does to me anyway, like slightly in the back of my brain going, oh, here we go, it's going to get cleverer and cleverer.
Yeah, but
Skynet.
It's mad. Absolutely mad. And fascinating. Equally fascinating.
Although, technically, GamesMaster himself was an AI. He wasn't, but he was.
God, he was, wasn't he?
He was a forerunner to it. I mean, technically, they could bring him back as a
they couldn't
as
they?
a deep fake, and
Wow.
they genuinely could.
Maybe the next series of the new Gamesmaster will
Although
do that.
I did like Trevor McDonald, so
That is true. Yeah. He was.
I thought
he
he
was
was-
the best part. Wasn't
That was
he?
actually an inspired casting.
Yeah.
I thought so as well. I loved him as it.
Yeah. Back to the old Gamesmaster anyway, and Gamesmaster had a ton of famous faces go through its doors over the years, and we were just wondering if there was a particular person you heard was coming that you was really excited to meet, and if you did get to meet them, I hope they weren't a disappointment.
Several. Phil Babb. I'm a massive Liverpool football fan. So Phil Babb, the Liverpool footballer, when he came in, that was a big moment for me. But that was the only problem was, and it's not that he wasn't the biggest games fan. There were other footballers we had on the show, like Chris Armstrong from Tottenham, who genuinely were massive gamers. So they were as thrilled to come in through the doors as we were to receive them. So, and Phil Babb wasn't. So that was a shame. But he was definitely one of those that I went, wow, that is pretty cool. And I was really happy to meet him. The disappointment was I didn't get to meet these two, who I was a huge fan of the TV show Fists of Fun with Richard Herring and Stuart Lee. And to the extent where I was... when I heard that they were coming in to do a challenge, and I can't remember who commentated on that one, it might have been Derek Lynch, that I was meant to go home, but I actually hung around just to watch the challenge from the sides. And I was hoping to meet them, and unfortunately I never got to. I think someone sort of like shepherded me off, or something happened and I didn't get to meet them. And that would have been... I mean, they're not the biggest names, but they, to me, were, at that time in the 90s, they were like the comedy heroes of mine in many respects. So that was a shame. Other people that I did meet that I just thought were absolutely brilliant. Zoe Ball. Yeah. Zoe Ball, for the girly episode, as we called it, was one of the nicest, funniest people I've ever met on a TV set. She was happy to do anything that would make the TV show better. And that, for me, was like that was the yardstick by which all celebrities should have been. So I was really pleased about that. Another one exactly down that same line. Nicest person ever. Really was happy to do anything it took to make the show better. Was Danny John Jules, Cat from Red Dwarf.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, he was so cool. He was such a nice bloke, and genuinely hung around and just chatted to us. It was like Zoe Ball as well. She hung around afterwards and stuff like that. I mean, I've done other shows beyond that I've ended up working with people that I can't believe I ended up working with. Like, for example, I did a show for Sky called... what was it called? I can't even remember the name of it now. Where I worked with Trevor and Simon.
Well, cool.
And again, having sort of like... I mean, I wasn't particularly young, but I was watching them in Saturday mornings throughout my life at that point. They were properly people that I was going, oh my God, I'm really nervous about meeting these. And then I worked with them, and then I ended up going to the pub with them often. And you just go, that's incredible. That is just genuinely brilliant. And the other thing about GamesMaster as well, and I think what people may not... some people might know this already, some people might not have got this from the show, but we were a bunch of people who had never done television before, or at least not much television before, who were thrust into it, who made it up as we went along, and were more a load of mates making a TV show that we thought was funny. So any celebrities, we didn't see ourselves in that category at all. So we were always sort of starstruck, always, with everybody who came through the doors, because we didn't put ourselves in the same category at all. And so... you know, I'm trying to remember all the different people. I mean, there were some people that weren't very nice.
No.
People that I struggled with.
Yeah.
But there were mostly all the people, even the presenters. And now this goes back to when I very first started on GamesMaster personally. I started as a researcher on Games World about soon after Series 1 of GamesMaster had finished. So I'd been watching GamesMaster Series 1. I was a fan who ended up getting a job.
That must have been very surreal for you then.
Yeah. So I had interviewed Dominic Diamond the year before for my magazine on the build-up to GamesMaster coming onto TV, but hadn't obviously spoken to him, didn't know him, and I kind of was a bit starstruck by him. So I ended up going on, joining the company and going to GamesMaster Live in Birmingham, which was the first time I met Dominic. And I went out for a meal with Dominic, and we just clicked. But at the same time, as I was going, I can't believe this is Dominic Diamond. I can't believe I'm having a meal with Dominic Diamond. So it was very weird that, like 3 years later, I was actually on screen sharing screen time with Dominic. So it and still to this day, there's a little bit of me, and I won't admit it to him, but he might listen to this, that I am still a bit starstruck by him, because he is a presence. When I did lots and lots of other TV after GamesMaster, I did lots of TV for different companies. I made television shows about video games for lots of different places, and I always said I wanted to work with Dominic again. He was the best person I've ever worked with. He was the most professional person I ever worked with, but he also made you feel really comfortable, and that, I think, is the tie-in element between him, Zoe Ball, Danny John Jules, is that they made you feel comfortable. So even if you're a little bit starstruck, by the end of it you feel like you've made something special.
You feel like mates.
Yeah. Dexter Fletcher was another one that I went, I can't believe because I was a big Press Gang fan. And I was the one that auditioned Dexter Fletcher for GamesMaster, so it is my fault, essentially. But but he was excellent in that interview. He was brilliant, and what a lovely lad. And then I ended up doing another GamesMaster Live, this time with him, where we did a show live from Birmingham. And he was brilliant. And we spent a good day together having a good laugh and playing on the dodgems and doing all manner of normal things. And I remember thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this with Dexter Fletcher. And of course, he's gone on to even better things now. I mean, he's now a big movie director. So good on him. I'm really pleased for him.
And I mean, and as we all know now these days, like it was Series 3 GamesMaster was never really Dexter's fault anyway, because he did the best that he could at the time with what he was given, and it was more so backroom stuff, really, wasn't it? That was
there was so much trouble on GamesMaster Series 3. There was a lot of flux behind the scenes, and Dominic leaving really did throw a cat amongst the pigeons. It really did. And that series, I mean, I was on Games World at that time, and Games World had become, at Hewland around that time, almost the flagship show, because we were making a show for Sky that was 5 times a week, so every single weekday, for 26 weeks, and half an hour a show. So, we were making 2.5 hours of TV programming every week for half a year.
I'm exhausted just hearing that.
Yeah, so it was a massive operation, Games World. Games World was a huge operation, so we were getting a lot more attention at that time because it needed it. And of course, it's sort of like, and then Dominic had left GamesMaster and it threw that up in the air. So kind of everything changed. Everything changed around the same time, and Dexter kind of got caught up in it. The other problem Dexter had was he's an actor, not presenter. He had never presented anything. He was an actor. And on top of that, he was only really known for having an American accent in Press Gang.
Yeah, that is true.
So he came on screen and spoke in his normal accent and went, "Right in, how you all doing?"
Yeah.
And the amount of complaints we got, why is he doing a stupid Cockney accent? Why is that American coming over here and doing a stupid Cockney accent? And it wasn't, that was him.
Yeah.
So immediately it failed. Immediately. Yeah. And I felt very, very sorry for him. He was actually a really nice lad, and he didn't deserve the backlash that it got.
I mean, I never really had a problem. I quite liked Dexter. I really loved the accent, and I don't know if it's because I'm a southerner boy as well. I've kind of grown up in Essex, so I've always been quite close to London and East London people, with that kind of accent. So it never really jarred me as much, I guess. So I always quite liked it, watching Series 3 GamesMaster and going, "All right, mate, here we go." All that kind of stuff, He came into his own, actually, in the second half of the season when they decided to get rid of almost the old GamesMaster format and then turn it into that tournament. Yeah. Where
they did it in the prison, which is now a Malmaison in Oxford, and I have stayed in one of the cells.
Have you?
Because it's now a hotel. And I remember going back, and the thing is, I was there because I was going to an F1 race at one of the British Grand Prix, and I was in that hotel and I was going, I recognise this hotel. Why do I recognise this hotel? And I couldn't for the life of me think. And then suddenly somebody said, that's because GamesMaster was filmed here in that season. And so there you go.
What roundabout circles, isn't it?
Yeah, it really does sometimes. It's very odd.
Obviously was your commentary, but also your games reviews. And what was it like reviewing games with GamesMaster? Was it always like a rush to get them ready, or did you have the luxury of some time to try and prepare and get it ready?
Oh, here's a behind the curtain kind of a Wizard of Oz moment. It was horrible, and the reason why it was horrible was because we had about 2 to 3 days to film all of the reviews for the entire series. Just 2 days, actually. It was just 2 days per series, and on one of the series, I was at Hewland, so it was a little bit easier. But the second series, I think Series 6, I was actually working at EMAP Publishing, EMAP Images, as deputy editor of I can't even remember the name of PC Review magazine. And so I wasn't there while they had all the games in. And I was on a PC Games magazine. So I'd only really seen PC games. at that point, apart from playing a few games at home on whatever console it was at the time. So I would get a call and we would have to film, I can't remember how many episodes, but how many game reviews, about, say, 20 game reviews in a day. And a lot of those I hadn't seen, literally the day we're filming. So I would end up having to go there, sit in a room, play it for an hour, then review it. And in fact, I say an hour, hours being generous. So
that must be really tough, because
it was really, really tough
to come up with a thought process, an idea of what that game is about, and to come up with stuff to say about the game in such a short space of time, and not make yourself look like a fool.
Well, that. I don't think I managed that, but it's why if you ever watch them back, it's why I'm quite vague in that series about about some of them. Some of them I'd seen. I mean, some of the games I'd either played at home because they'd sent me a check disc. Because also the other thing is we filmed so far in advance on GamesMaster to when it went out, that a lot of the games were very early code. Very early, and not review code. Nowadays, if I'm reviewing a game, and I still do it very often, Hogwarts Legacy, I think, was the last game I reviewed, that I will have played that game for about a week before launch. I'll be sent it about a week before it's actually on sale. I'll get a good 4 days or so to review it by an embargo. So at least I've played it for 4 days, and it's almost like I'll just cram that in and I'll just sit there and I'll play and play and play and play. With GamesMaster, we were sent code months in advance of the game coming out. So a lot of those games were barely recognisable to the game that actually even came out, because they were very, very early, bug-ridden, the lot. So there was a hell of a lot of vagueness. You had to be, because you sort of like went, oh, well. But then at the same time, and this is why me and Dave worked really well as a review partnership, is because both of us were very experienced journalists at that time, games journalists. I'd been doing it for over 7-8 years by that point, and now like over 30 years. But by that point, about 7 years, I'd been a games journalist. So I had seen a lot of games. A hell of a lot of games up to that point. So if it was a new version of Street Fighter 2, it was easy, because I knew what to look for immediately. I didn't have to spend too much time with the game to know that it was going to be good or it wasn't going to be good. But I didn't go into too much detail, purely because what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to say something that ended up not in the final game, or that we didn't have too much knowledge of. It's also why we kind of avoided big, long games that took like more than 5-6 hours to play. In them days, it was a little bit easier. I mean, now, God, I can't even imagine how we'd do it. Skyrim. How on earth would you review Skyrim on thing? So, that was the process of the reviews. And the other thing that we saw reviews as, and this again, it worked best when it was me and Dave, I thought, is because we had very contrary opinions about video games. Dave was really a beat 'em up fan and was very much into sort of like the combos and the sort of like the more hardcore gaming. I was very much a sports game fan, and I was very much into sort of like long play and long lead in. And so it worked brilliantly, because when one of us didn't quite know the game as well as the other one genuinely had a good idea. Yeah. And so we could just bounce off each other. And sometimes even argue with each other. I liked that. That was a good dynamic, where I remember there was one, I think it might have been a Mortal Kombat, which is the only beat-em-up series I liked. And I seem to remember that Dave didn't like Mortal Kombat. So it became a full-on argument. And they went, this is brilliant. We'll use this.
I think as a viewer as well, we were obviously, the reviews were always part of GamesMaster that we always expected to see. But I think at this point in time, this was the best time for the reviews on GamesMaster, because you had that kind of yin and yang kind of thing going on between you, and it made it more interesting to get those different opinions about the same game, instead of just hearing the same ones kind of thing, or just hearing one opinion from one person. To get that different opinions about the one game, it just made it that ever so more interesting.
There's a good anecdote as well about the reviews, is because we were filming it in a block that was separate, because what they would do is they would hire a separate little studio, because the GamesMaster was made on a location. It was either in a studio, like Series 7 was made on the same lot as the Big Brother house, in a studio where Blur filmed their Country House video, whereas Series 6 was Atlantis, wasn't it? So that was in a church that was converted into Atlantis, and then thing. But they were done in a block booking, so they would be filmed over a 2-week period. Every single episode was over a 2-week period on that set. The reviews and the Games Master himself were filmed on a blue screen in a tiny little studio in Soho, quite a distance away from when they filmed the main show. So it'd be months. It'd be weeks, if not a month or two. And I seem to remember I completely forgot that I was meant to be doing the reviews. So I'd done the whole series. It might have been series 6 of reviews. Of the main filming with stupid yellow hair after trying to dye it blonde and it going horribly wrong. And then I got a call saying we need to do the news. I'd shaven my head.
Oh no.
I'd completely shaved my head, and continuity was all to cock. So I ended up wearing a hat in the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
To disguise the fact that I'd actually shaved my head. And I got loads and loads of letters saying, why do you always wear that stupid hat? Are you just a Dave Perry impersonator?
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's essentially the reviews process on GamesMaster. It was good. It was good to do it. I mean, it was okay when I was working at Hewland, because on Games World we also did reviews, and it would generally be the same code because the company would send us a cartridge for the Mega Drive that was pre-release code, and we'd review it on both. So I had seen most of the games at that point, because I'd go into the games room and I'd sit down with Richard Wilcox, who was one of the producers on GamesMaster, and actually sit there and look at all the games with him. But that one series where I wasn't working at Hewland at the time, that was the one that was really tricky.
And it must have been, was it quite exciting for you to get these kind of pre-released versions? I mean, I guess you've seen versions of games that no one really will see.
To be honest, by that point I was, and it's like even now, it becomes your job after a while, and I've never stopped knowing that is an exciting thing, and that I am very privileged. However, it's as normal as clocking in. It's something that's I've had now since I literally left school. So for a good 35 years or so. I've always seen games before they come out. And also the other thing is, I'm a massive games fan and always have been, and will play anything. And I will play things until I finish them, or for hours and hours and hours. I chuck 140 hours into one game. I play games daily, and I still do, on all of the different formats. I love it. I absolutely love gaming. However, when you get sent a game to review, it's a very different experience, because you are playing that game to get to a point where you are knowledgeable enough about that game to write about it or talk about it. And that can ruin that game for you, because you're not really enjoying the gameplay aspect of it. It's a very different thing. And that's something that sometimes I'll get sent a game that I really want, that I turn down as a review because I really want to play it.
Yeah.
And that I seem to remember that happened quite a lot on GamesMaster, where we would get something in and I go, I don't want to spoil it for myself. I think on the flip side of it is that I have discovered some games that I may not have played before, may not have played in a usual sense, had I not had to review them.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of indie games that I've then gone, this is absolutely genius, this is brilliant, but I may never have even picked it up before. So there is a sort of like a slight benefit to it as well. Yeah, but that GamesMaster was a very weird one, purely because, and it's like I'd said at the top of the podcast that I did best Christmas TV ads for Channel 5. And again, it's a very similar kind of thing, those talking head shows. And I would say that the reviews on GamesMaster are very much like that, where you go in, there's a seat and you're up against blue screen or what have you, and they just go, right, you're going to be talking about SodaStream, here's the advert, and then they show you the advert, in case you didn't remember it, and most people wouldn't, because it was a 1970s advert, and you suddenly go, right, okay, and then they go, right, we're rolling, and you go, the SodaStream advert was, it's like, and you have to turn it on, even though you've literally just seen it probably for the first time.
Well, big kudos to you there, mate, because I know if that was me, I'd be just standing there umming and ahhing. Just
That happened a lot.
The Garth from Wayne's World moment where you just walk out.
Oh, that happened a hell of a lot, especially on Games World.
I couldn't do it.
On Games World, I was as well as being the producer, I was a character called the Violet Blade, which was one of the videators that played kids at games. And one of the things that we had to do, and this is one of the reasons why Consultation Zone was cancelled on GamesMaster as well, is that you had to come out and we got the videators to do the cheat codes for one of the shows on Games World. And it would be literally, the script would be to get to level 32 as a cheat, you have to press A, B, up, down, left, right, right button, left button twice. And genuinely, and the way we used to do it is we didn't sort of like film a little bit and then pick up a piece of paper, read it, and then film a little bit to finish. We'd do it all to camera. And the amount of times where I would just go, I've no idea what this is. How can you memorise an entire cheat code that's like 20 different steps long? It used to freak me out. And because I was also the producer, it was my money I was wasting. So, that was... and that is one of the reasons why the Consultation Zone was taken off of GamesMaster as well. Because it just became a litany of just button presses that you had to remember. It was horrible.
And the trouble then, back in those days, we would have to like record that on a VHS and then play it back bit by bit.
And also, I hate to say this, is another behind the curtain thing. Some of those didn't work. We did. I seem to remember the researchers didn't always have the chance to check every single one.
I'm surprised it didn't get a lot of hate mail then. Going, we tried this code that was on under consultation, and it was like,
probably
it didn't work.
Probably did. Probably did. We used to get sackloads. I mean, there was a time when we used to get sackloads of mail for GamesMaster, certainly.
Did you ever ruffle through?
Some of them would be addressed to us. So some of them would be addressed to Dominic, some would be addressed to me, some to Kirk. A lot to Dave. Dave got a hell of a lot of fan mail, funny enough. Did he? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, because I've said this quite a few times. Dave was very much the video gamer of the team on GamesMaster. And he was the one that if it was a YouTube channels, if we each had a YouTube channel, Dave's would be the hardcore gaming channel. He would be the one that people would follow because they want really strong gaming content. Mine, Kirk's and Dominic's would be if they wanted to people to just cock about with Nerf guns in a park somewhere. So
I kind of want to see that now.
I'll have to ask Kirk if he can meet me for a Nerf gun fight at some point.
Yeah, I love a Nerf gun fight. Oh my god. It has been so many years. I had a young cousin that always bought Nerf guns, and Nerf gun fights were legendary. As
part of my job, I go to the toy fair every year. And they've always got the latest.
How do you get into getting paid for doing this? I mean, like...
And they always have the Nerf area and stuff like that. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. But yeah, Dave got a hell of a lot of fan mail because he got all the sort of like the more hardcore gaming fan mail. Mm-hmm. After all, he was the games animal.
He was indeed, yeah.
And me and Dominic used to get. I got a lot of gay fan mail, which was I was really proud of. I'm a straight man, but I was very proud of that.
Very flattering.
And it also showed that it was. And this is the thing: a lot of people used to say that GamesMaster had a very specific audience, young male. That was a lot of people thought that, but not according to our fan mail and the people we always met and the people we've even spoken to since. We had quite a wide range of different people watch GamesMaster. Really did. And it was good to know that they were out there.
Quite intrigued in your fan mail now, because did you ever open one and it was like, oh, what?
Yeah. Oh, there was one lady who used to send all of us some art. It's the best way of saying it. Yeah, and every series we'd always get a bit of art from, and we go, oh, hello. Don't know what to do with this.
It was quite gracious art.
No. It was about, if you've ever walked past 2 consecutive kebab shops, you might know what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a bit meaty, is the best way I can say it. Oh, God. Oh, dear. And the funny thing is, I haven't thought about that for years. I genuinely haven't. I've literally only just thought about that right now. There are so many things. There were entire episodes that I was on that I have no recollection doing. Mm-hmm. And that is quite a thing. And that people just sort of say to me, "Oh, do you remember doing this?" And I go, "With whom? Why? I don't. I genuinely don't."
Are you quite grateful that they're all on YouTube now, so you can go back and go?
Yeah. This was brilliant. Somebody who was a really big fan had recorded every single episode, had them all on VHS, and decided to clean them up, run them through some kind of sort of AI to make them look a bit better, and then burnt DVDs, but also did it in a box set, so with proper DVD covers and a proper box and everything, and sent me one.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
I've got literally every single series, every single episode on a DVD box set.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm genuinely I wish I'd even had half the thought of doing something similar for things like Games World. And the show that I'm most is the one that I forgot at the top of the show. The show that I've forgotten the name of, that Trevor and Simon were in. I wish I had recorded at least one episode of that, because it was done for the Sky's computer channel, which I actually helped create to begin with. But it was a video games competition show again, and the commentator was first Charlie Brooker for half a season. Mm-hmm. He was dressed as a monk for I can't remember why, and then he left, and they asked me to take over from Charlie Brooker.
Wow!
So I came in, and you couldn't get two opposites of comedy in that respect, because Charlie Brooker was all very clever, Charlie Brooker-esque. And then I came in and did tons of knob gags. That's all. While 11-year-olds played games.
Amazing. Brilliant.
Dressed as a monk for no apparent reason. And I wish I'd got at least one episode of that on tape. But it would help if I actually remembered what the name was. Yeah. For starters.
I think there's a market. You saying you've got every single GamesMaster episode on a box set. There's plenty of people, including myself, who would happily pay like a Kickstarter for something like that. And
we tried. I didn't try, but somebody tried to get the rights to be able to do it and do it as a professional thing. Because the tapes do still exist. The original tapes of the show do still exist. Future owns them all.
Right. Okay.
Future Publishing.
Yeah. Who
made the very recent GamesMaster TV series, the sort of like the rehash. And they could technically do that, but the problem is that the rights are kind of weird, because while Future owns the rights to GamesMaster, Channel 4 owns half the rights to the shows, and Channel 4 have never signed it off because of the look of it. I wish they'd do something like BBC 4 do with Top of the Pops, where they clean them up and they put them out. I would happily see that, and I think people would watch them as well, even on television, for that retro feel. The games are old and things, but the actual spirit of the shows remains today.
Well, it's like a time capsule, GamesMaster, especially because of the amount of different things that were covered on the show, not just the games, but like when Dominic went on his travels. And he'd go to film sets, and he'd go to Universal Studios, and go on the Jurassic Park ride, all those kind of things, as well as all the games as well. And it's such a great preservation for that kind of stuff and that time. That it should definitely be. I don't know. It feels like there should definitely be something done with it, And if everyone can sort it out, so GoldenEye can return, then why not GamesMaster too?
Oh, right to your local representative of Channel 4 and Future Publishing, and see what can be done there. I would happily like to see that. I remember Challenge TV, when that first came about, that actually did start broadcasting it again. I thought they might get to later episodes, but I think they did Series 1, and then they did Series 2, and it just stopped, which is a real shame. because that would have been, to be fair, I didn't sign, my contract didn't have repeat rights anyway, so actually, sod it, I don't have cared.
And I tell you, like, being honest, like, I never really caught a lot of the Games World programs, but and that makes me more intrigued in the show now.
Yeah, and that's the rarer one. That's the one that people have less copies. There are some on YouTube.
Yeah.
But out of context, it's a weird show because what we did is that Monday nights were a show called The Eliminator, where kids played against each other to get one winner. Then there was a live show. This is series 2 and on, which I don't count series 1 because it was very different and a bit weird. But series 2 had a live show where we played video games live with contestants at home using telephone technology. It never worked. I don't know why we did it. Then it was another episode of The Eliminator, so another kids doing stuff. Then it was Big Boy Barry's show. First it was called Barry's Joypad, then it was Barry TV, and that was a comedy show. That was a comedy show with David Walliams and Alex Verry as Big Boy Barry, with reviews and news and games features sort of like shoehorned in. And then on the Fridays was Beat the Elite, which was a cross between Gladiators, WWE, and GamesMaster, where the kids that had won in the individual eliminators would come on and play against the videators, of which I was one, to try and win prizes. And that was essentially Games World, and it was on every single night of the week, and it ran for 3 years, and then I brought it back again as a morning show for Sky about 3 years after that, and we did it for another massive run. And that's the problem, is that it was on Sky at a time when Sky was still a fledgling service. So while there was an awful lot of content, GamesMaster had a peak audience of 4 million people, whereas Games World had a peak audience of 400,000 people. That's the main difference.
And you had the Games Mistress, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Jet?
Diane Udale, Jet,
that's right, yeah,
from Gladiators. Yeah, she was a lovely person as well. She was really, really easy to work with. Really nice person.
Yeah, I kind of get that. I mean, she does her Gladiators podcast now, and whenever I hear her talk, I don't know, like sometimes, you just hear someone speaking, or you talk to somebody and you just know that they're like a proper nice, genuine person.
Yeah.
And she just seems to come across as one of those kind of people. So it must have been really cool to work with her.
I had no idea until now she had her own podcast. That's interesting.
But there were so many people came out of those shows. I mean, Matt Berry. He was a runner on GamesMaster, who I was offered a job at another company, and they wanted me to do a new TV show for them for the Sky Computer Channel, and Matt basically used to make me laugh, so I went, let's put him on screen, see what happens. And the rest is history.
Thank you for doing that, Rik.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole world thanks you for Matt Berry.
And on that show, the editor was a guy called Gareth Edwards, who just so happened to have made Star Wars Rogue One.
Wow.
Well, thank you for doing that too, Rik.
Yeah. So a lot of people came from that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
But I mean, if someone was to try and do the same to GamesMaster and put all the Games World episodes on a DVD, it'd be quite like the James Bond box set or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions before we
go for it.
Get into your picks. Like with the GamesMaster oral history book out now, was there anything you read in there that you learned for the first time or surprised you?
There were things in there that I'd completely forgotten. Well, actually, the biggest thing that surprised me is because I hadn't spoken to Dominic for a very long time. And I knew, because I know Jack Templeton, who was writing it with Dom, and Jack kept contacting me, and I did all my interviews with Jack. So all the stuff in the book that is credited to me, I had done a long chat with Jack. So I still hadn't talked to Dominic. So it was really nice for me to see some of the comments Dominic made about my contribution on GamesMaster, because sometimes it went so quickly. We were all in our mid-20s, so we all went out a lot and things that you don't stop and take notice, and you don't quite realise what you've got until it's gone. And so going back to the book and just reading some of the things he said, that genuinely made me happy. But there was one, and I think it's the caption on the one photo of me in the book. I mean, that in itself, considering how many series I did, one photo of me in the entire book.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was Yeah, I'm only joking. I was happy that there was a photo of me in the book. I'm joking. But there is a caption of the one photo of me and Dom, and it's really lovely. But it was like a thing that I had genuinely not thought about since it happened. Was me and Dom trying to have a wee on the top of a bank and near Camden Lock, and falling down the embankment whilst still weeing. Was genuine, blind drunk, and I just made me laugh like a child. It really did, because I hadn't remembered that. There were other things I don't think he put in the book that he could have, that also made me laugh when we were chatting ourselves. But that one, I think that's the bit that. And also, the other thing is that first season I had nothing to do with, so it was great reading about first season.
Yeah.
And it reminded me how important people like Dave Perry was to the show, because he was a researcher on the very first season of GamesMaster. But so was Jason Bradbury. And people might not remember Jason Bradbury, but Jason Bradbury was a presenter of the Gadget Show for many, many years. But he was a researcher on GamesMaster Season 1. And there were little things like that I just went, oh, wow. So even I learnt something from it.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Yeah, because obviously, for me as a viewer, you never really, I don't know, like, you watched the show and you moved on, and you never really thought about what occurred behind this program and how it was made and that kind of stuff. And I guess you don't really think about that kind of stuff until you're a bit older. And even as an adult, and I would think about GamesMaster, and I think there must be like riches of stories to be told.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I think in the book, there is one bit that says that my nickname at GamesMaster was Rick and Ori.
Yeah.
And more recently, my friends have called me Wikipedia. It's because there are so many stories from that period.
Yeah.
And once I've had a bevy or two, I'll generally regale people with that. It's hard to sort of like get them down to the basics of these stories, because there are so many things that happen. It was so funny and such a joy, and never had another job like it.
Yeah.
Never, and never will. I can't imagine ever being able to repeat something like that. And I would find it very hard for people to repeat what we did, purely because we didn't take ourselves too seriously. Mm-hmm. We genuinely didn't. So that's where all the stories come from. I remember we went and played football at Arsenal's. Was it at the Emirates, or was it Highbury? I think it was when it was still Highbury, and we got chased off the grounds by one of the Arsenal groundskeepers, because we were weeing all over the Arsenal team bus. me and Dominic, and just things like that. Little stories, just little things. Us giggling as we're running away from the thing, going weed on Arsenal's team bus. And and even bad stories, like when we went out for a meal once, and all the way through a meal, some blokes in the next table kept flicking bits of poppadom at Dominic, going, "Give us a cheat for Mario, you bastard."
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Just little things. There was so many weird moments, and on-set stuff, and it was a joy. It was genuinely a joy. Going to work, we used to put it all into context, we used to have to start very, very early in the morning. My cab would pick me up at about 5:30 in the morning on filming days and drive me to East London or wherever we were filming at the time. Drive me there, and then you'd sit around for a good hour or two, and then we'd start filming. And then at the end of the day, we wouldn't finish until about 7 o'clock that evening. So it's a very, very long day. Not once did I complain. Not once did I need to, because it just felt fun, And I've done a lot of TV shows since, and I've never felt like that again.
Yeah.
I felt like, oh wow, this is dragging on.
Yeah. I think I think there's always a moment in everybody's life, I think, where they land and they just have this point in time of their lives where they look back and it was just perfect.
Yeah.
It was moments, of a couple of years block or whatever, where you look back on and go, do you know what? That was a really.
I'm sure not everybody's got those memories. I'm sure the kid who on series 4 in Hell whose trainers melted in the cage that they were kept because what they. Oh, this was The cage. If you go back to season 4, all the audience were kept in a cage.
Yep.
And it was very long days, and they were often very like lots and lots of reshoots. Like schools would go, yeah, let's go and be in the audience. We'll happily send 50 kids to be in the audience. Never returned because it is a long day for those audience members, especially when you're going to put them in a cage and put underlighting.
Yeah.
And you're using studio lights, not normal lights, studio lights underneath the floor of a cage, and then asking those kids to stay in there for an hour or two.
How many passed out, Rick? How many passed out?
Well, apparently there were a few, and one kid's trainers melted.
God.
I'm not surprised.
So, yeah. So, genuinely, some people
that's
probably
crazy.
came away.
He must have been literally standing on the light for that to happen.
Well, it was hot. It was very, very hot. So, yeah.
That's funny you say that, because, like, I mean, I've watched some of Series 4 back on YouTube, and I see the kids in the cage. And I'm thinking to myself, even in the 90s, how did they get away with putting kids behind in a cage?
The amount we used to get away with. You know, the latest series of GamesMaster, the one that has just been on Channel 4, that throws contestants into a sort of like, and they're meant to fall down into hell.
Oh, it's the Abyss, yeah.
Yeah, into the Abyss. Well, that was actually taken from Games World, the series that I did for Sky when I came back. And what we actually did is we built a genuine, done like an Aztec thing, a genuine execution pit. And it had steps up, and there was a good 3 to 4 foot drop onto massive cushioned mats. And if you lost on my show, and this was my idea, if you lose on the show, I said, rather than just go and, you haven't won, bye, we literally throw you into a pit. And then there would be smoke coming out of the pit, and it looked like you've been consumed by fire. And in fact, and then we would put on a sound effect that just went, thud.
Brilliant.
Right? So I thought that would be funny, and the kids loved it. Absolutely loved it. And yet, you know, nowadays, can you imagine that? Can you imagine saying to somebody at BBC, right, what I want to do is I want to throw literal children into a 4-foot pit. Just because, and while we're taking them to the pit, everybody else, including the entire studio audience, are going to shout loser.
Oh God, no, yeah, right. No.
So we did, and yet we did that. We did that for half a year on Sky. So yeah,
and that's just pure 90s, though. That's brilliant.
It is. You would not get away with it any other time, and that is 90s were a golden period for television as a viewer as well. You know, I was big fan of all the sort of like the youth programming on BBC Two and Channel 4 at that time.
We were too.
And I can't remember the name. Network 7. There we go. Network 7, which was Janet Street Porter's show that sort of preceded GamesMaster. And you know, these shows are just, and The Word, and youth television around that time. Oh man, it was perfect.
Yeah, TFI Friday.
Yeah, and it was, and the reason being is that we still have that stuff. It's so disparate because there's so many channels and so much other content with Twitch and YouTube and all the other TikTok that it distills that. So it's out there. It's still happening.
Yeah.
But it's so distilled. Whereas at that time we only had four channels.
Yeah, Channel 5 was like late night.
Yeah, it was a lot later. Yeah, right at the end of the 90s, Channel 5 popped along. And so all of the stuff that you would now see in much more niche areas was actually on terrestrial TV.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that too. You know, I do think these days we have too much, and it's just impossible.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's overconsumed. I don't know. It overconsumes me. It overwhelms me.
I'm saying the Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Exactly.
I often get Xbox Game Pass going, what am I going to play today? And I end up not playing anything. It's way too much
syndrome,
choice.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess before we just get into your picks, have a quick chat about them, as we've been going for so long already. I can't believe it's gone so fast. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the podcast that you do, The Game of Life, and, you know, the premise behind it and why you started doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Games Life, the name is obviously a sort of like a well, as long as Future's lawyers aren't listening. The name is clearly inspired by GamesMaster, but it also basically explains what it's about, because it is. What I do is I decided that I wanted to talk to people. Initially, I wanted to talk to people that I already knew who had been in the video games industry for quite some time. And it was initially devised as a way of talking to all my old GamesMaster and Games World friends to kind of get their opinions on that time of our lives. Mm-hmm. So I called it Games Lifer because I thought, Dave, you have spent a lifetime in games. But then it expanded the remit slightly. So basically what it is it's a podcast where I have one guest on, and what we do is we look at that person's life from the very beginning, from when they first started playing video games all the way through to what they're doing now, and it's interspersed with the 5 games that are most significant to them. Not necessarily the games that they like the most, might be the games they hate the most, but they are significant. And that has already, and we've only done 4 episodes. The 5th one is soon to come out, but it has thrown up some quite extraordinary answers so far. The very first episode of Games Life I did with Alex Very, who was Big Boy Barry on Games World, he's a PR man in the industry. He currently works with Embracer Group, who are buying pretty much every video games company.
Quite a massive company now.
Yeah, and he revealed that Tetris on the Game Boy was his favourite. It was one of his choices because it's the one game that his dad ever played. His dad wasn't a gamer, and his dad sadly passed away, and so he has never taken that game out of the Game Boy. He's never played another game on that Game Boy because he never wants to take Tetris out of the Game Boy. And that was on the first episode, and suddenly I went, that's why I'm doing this podcast. Because it's for stories like that. It's that thing where you can find out something that you never knew about a person that you might already think you know a lot about. The Dominic Diamond one was just hilarious. I mean, that was just me and Dom just catching up on old times. But you know, there are others in the pipeline as well that I've recorded that have got very similar kind of connotations to the first one as well. So and hopefully we'll have some really good guests. But my only problem is I'm idea rich, time poor. Yeah. And I tend to I was planning on getting a Games Lifer episode out every single month. It's now over a year and a half and I've only done 5.
I can't remember when we had Dominic Diamond on, he mentioned, I don't know. I don't think he might have mentioned that he did one with you.
He did do one, and it took me 6 months to edit it.
And I was like waiting for it to drop.
He was spitting feathers. He was fuming. And everybody who, you know, ever saw him on anything other than GamesMaster, any of the other stuff, will know he can swear like a trooper. Mm-hmm. And boy, did I get my DMs filled with Dominic swears.
I bet you did.
Because he was trying to use that podcast as promotion for his big purple column, or little purple column.
Substack, wasn't it? Yeah.
And of course, it took me 6 months to get it done, purely because I also host the Pocket Lint podcast, which is a weekly podcast that I do for PocketLint.com. And that's half an hour about tech chat. And again, I interview people on that, but it's much more conventional kind of interview. It's like I spend 10 minutes talking to someone like Jack Dorsey, ex-Twitter, or something like that. And that's much more sort of like, tell us about your product and all that sort of thing. But Games Lifer I do as a passion project, and I absolutely love doing it, but unfortunately I'm just not very good at turning it around very quickly. So if you do end up coming on it, if someone's listening and wants to be on my podcast, don't expect it to come out anytime soon, even if we record it. What I've started to do as well is I've got one coming up with a guy called Mike Channel from Outside Xbox, which is obviously it's a podcast that a YouTube channel that has millions of viewers, and he is a massive GamesMaster fan, but also brilliant journalist, truly brilliant journalist that I've wanted to talk to for years, but I've never met him before. So, in fact, we both worked at the same place, but we never even spoke. So it was great having him on because I didn't have a clue about his life journey.
Yeah.
So for me, I learned so much, and that again is a great way of doing it. Whereas with the Dominic one, I obviously knew what he did, how he got into games. I knew all that already.
Well, you probably knew what game picks he was going to choose too.
No, that he chose some classically good games. Actually, some really good picks he had. So yeah, so it was just it's a great podcast to do. I thoroughly enjoy myself doing it. I don't enjoy myself editing it.
Okay, well, let's leave GamesMaster behind and talk about some films and TV and video games that were important to you. And why don't we start with your film that you chose?
Right. Yeah, 3 decades. It's
Yeah,
quite a broad gamut.
It was easier when we used to just do the 90s, you know, because it was just pick them from the 90s. So at least you only had 10 years to choose from.
Yeah.
But now it's 30 years. Yeah, it's quite the question.
But at the same time, I actually enjoyed doing it because I came up with things I think that I wouldn't have initially have thought of. Mm-hmm. My initial choices would have been very different than these 3 because, for example, and I'll use this as a caveat. Every interview I ever did about GamesMaster back in the 90s, every single one of them said, "What's your favourite film?" Mm-hmm. And every single one of them, I'd say Escape to Victory, the film with Pele, Bobby Moore, and Sylvester Stallone.
Okay.
Who have to escape a prisoner of war camp.
I have vague memories of that,
Yeah,
I think.
and it's not my favourite film at all.
I was going to say, it's
but
actually your favourite.
But it genuinely made me laugh, and not the film didn't. It genuinely made me laugh to say that as a film because everybody go, "What? Why?" Yeah. And so I would always say that. So I very nearly said that, but I didn't want to because I thought actually I'm going to say things that I genuinely loved and have good reasons for. Right. So the film that I chose was Weird Science. And the reason why I chose this film actually changed literally about 10 minutes before we started doing the podcast. Because the main reason I chose this film is I absolutely love the film. Mm-hmm. I've always loved the film. It's probably one of the films I've seen more often than others. It's my Ferris Bueller's Day Off because it's just zany and crazy. And I there's a bit in it as well that me and my wife, every time police come on, the band Police, not the police, suddenly turn up. The band Police are on telly. I always go, "Roxanne, you don't have to put on a red light," which is a sequence out of Weird Science. It's just, and it reminds me of that little bit in the film. Very funny film, probably horribly inappropriate now and misogynistic, but I absolutely adore it. I adore everything about it. I adore the people in it, and I still to this day think it's an incredibly funny film, if awfully put together.
It's one I've never seen it.
You've never seen Weird Science? Right, well, there you go. Here's you've now learned something. You must go and see Weird Science.
No, I will. I mean,
it must be on a streaming service somewhere.
I'm sure it is, and if it isn't, I'm sure I can still get a copy somewhere.
It's on YouTube. Many people have uploaded it onto YouTube in full.
Oh, okay. Right.
There you go.
And Bill Paxton is in it.
The late great Bill Paxton, yeah.
Him.
Yeah. And I was
the military jock older brother, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I was a huge Bill Paxton fan after Aliens. So it genuinely, that probably got me to want to see Weird Science to begin with. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Loved it. Loved that film. But the reason that I suddenly remembered just only about half an hour before we started the podcast was that there is a significant reason for it as well, because I first saw Weird Science at a cinema in Hampstead. I smelt burning smoke during the screening. Never thought anything of it. Found out the next day that the cinema had burnt down.
Oh, God.
So, literally, after the film had finished and I'd left, the cinema had caught aflame. And so, Weird Science was the fact that it was short saved my life.
And that you can be thankful for.
Yeah. and genuinely, I only remembered that just before I went, oh, God, yeah, the cinema burnt down straight after Weird Science. So it has another significance, yeah. They
If it was a Marvel
rebuilt the
film,
cinema.
then you'd be screwed, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yes. Lord of the Rings, that was it.
Yeah,
I'd be
well, yeah.
toast.
But no, I'm grateful. Like I watched the trailer and I was like, "Oh, Robert Downey Jr. That's interesting."
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr.'s in it.
You should watch it, Jason.
Well,
'cause I'm-
like the whole premise of the film, two teenagers, they want to create the perfect woman, so they try and do this in a computer, and like she comes alive. I'm in.
And it's Kelly LeBrock as well.
Yeah.
I'm in. Don't worry, I'm in.
And it's really funny, genuinely funny, and it's got loads of. And it's silly. I mean, that's the thing about it.
That's what makes it charming. It's just pure John Hughes silliness,
and we absolutely don't get that in cinema today.
No,
I was thinking this. I literally a couple of days before you even asked me to think of a film. I was thinking all those 80s silly films, all those 80s comedies that just were slapstick or a bit weird or a little bit sort of like kids. There are no comedies in cinema today that can reflect that period. They have to be a little more socially conscious. Whereas these weren't socially conscious at all. It's just we're two losers at school, and so we create the perfect woman and then teach the bullies, something about their bullying. That's it, in a nutshell. And during that process, we'll be fighting, I think, werewolves on bikes. And...
Because I remember what I said to Jason pre-show. Like me and my brother probably doesn't remember, but I used to watch it quite a lot. It was one of the few videos I'd recorded off the TV, probably a late night Channel 4 showing or something. And I was proper into sort of high sci-fi concepts in the 90s when I was a kid. And this film spoke to me on so many levels, and I was just blown away by it when I was a kid. I was like, just like you said, just two charming losers who are good at math and science, and they create a replicator by hooking it up to a computer and making 3D models. And then anything they put into the scanner, they can create life as a replica of whatever toy or thing they put into this machine. And it was just like, what is going on? And then, like you said, it's just such a clusterfuck of insane concepts and comedy. And it's great. Yeah, it's absolutely great.
It throws everything at you. It literally throws everything at you. There are so many mental moments in that movie.
And it's just amazing the who's in the cast. Like Anthony Michael Hall, another guy who has not stopped working for about 40 years. He just keeps going and turning up in things. And
very funny as well.
Yeah.
Very funny man.
Yeah, it's just one of those few memories I have of being a kid and watching films you shouldn't be watching at that age. But
yeah,
it didn't turn me into a weirdo. In actual fact, those films shaped my warped sense of humour and understanding of the world more than school did.
And I genuinely, I put it in the same category as Teen Wolf and Back to the Future, and there was a run of films around that 80s period that were about sort of high school kids getting into trouble. Yeah. In some respect or another, and it was always to be something to do with technology or science. And even just thinking about it now, it may have pushed me into the path that I'm now on. I don't know.
Okay, Rick, well, let's move on to your TV pick.
It's almost on a similar theme in the fact that it's zany and crazy, and it is still to this day, The Young Ones is one of my favourite TV shows of all time. And the main reason not only is it utterly brilliant, and there are a couple of good reasons for that. The zaniness of it is very similar to Weird Science, but the fact that it was only 12 episodes in total, never made any more, I think distilled it into something that was perfect. If it had gone for many years, then I think it would have devalued the show. But the fact that it was just two series of 6 episodes each made it unforgettable television. The reason why I choose it is because it came out at a time, I must have been 12, 13 when it came out, and it was naughty to watch it. So for a young child like myself at that time, and it expanded my mind. It just gave me an idea of how comedy could be, and could be. You didn't have to be serious all the time. You didn't have to try. You could have a go at the government, but in a way where you're just using a puppet hamster. It's just. But the main reason I chose it, actually, is because my name actually comes from it. So,
Does it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I renamed myself. My real name is Richard, so it's not too far away. But when I first started in the games industry, actually, so it must have come out towards the end of the 80s. I wouldn't have been that young when Young One started. But when I first started in the games industry as a staff writer on a magazine, you only got a first name byline, and there were 2 other Richards on the magazine.
Right.
So I had to change if I wanted to stand out, I was to change my name. And so what I did is I changed my name to the name of the person I adored most in the world, and that is Rik Mail. And at that time, and that was from the Young Ones. So I changed my name to Rik with the same spelling as Rik Mail.
Yeah.
Because I just went, the man's a hero. I want to. I'll change my name to Rik, and I'll take his spelling. So that's why the Young Ones is the most significant TV pick. But it's also just a brilliant show that I can watch over and over and over again. Bottom, I can as well, but Young Ones is just one of those things that I still to this day I watch it and I think I don't know how they created it. I don't know how. All the little nuances of the way that the comedy works and it interleaves and all the little offshoots and the side parts and it's so layered, and it influenced everything I did in television. Everything. Not so much on GamesMaster, although the innuendo, obviously, the innuendo and that kind of thing was obviously influenced. But on Games World, there were so many things that we wrote for Games World that were just where we tried to just be a little bit more anarchic. And certainly with the stuff I did with Matt Berry later on for a show called Game Over, which I mentioned earlier, that was very heavily influenced by by the Young Ones. There were bits where it was a video game show, but we would cut to 3 men on a bench with little cowboy hats on, dancing and going yee-haw, and then it'd cut like blip straight back into the show again for no apparent reason. That was all from the Young Ones. That was all inspired by the Young Ones. So so when I say it was a good show to choose, it was a good show to choose because it helped me in my career, not just and gave me the name that everybody bar my mum and my sister call me.
Do you
That's
think,
amazing.
You mentioned obviously like the GamesMaster and like obviously the series that you was involved with were very, laddish and everything. Do you think it was a little bit like the Young Ones?
There's lots of different characters all cocking about. 4 of us essentially. Well, no, there was me, Kirk, Dave, Derek Lynch, 5 of us, and Dominic, and Patrick Moore. But I wouldn't say he was particularly into cocking about.
No. We'll come across all that now.
Certainly, it allowed us, if the Young Ones hadn't been before us, and shows like that as well. There was a show called Kick Up the 80s, I think it was called, with Rik Mail in as well, and Fast Show, and shows of that ilk, we would not have been allowed to do what we did because they kind of were trailblazers and carved a new way of doing comedy where you didn't have to always have set up, middle, punchline. So you could just freestyle a little bit more, and you would still get the same results, which is ultimately people either enjoying it or laughing. There are other shows that I could have chosen that I absolutely adore still to this day, but when I was thinking about it, I just thought, do you know what? There isn't any other show that probably influenced my life as much as the Young Ones did.
Yeah. If you could be one of the Young Ones characters, who would you be?
I would always want to. Obviously, I would have wanted to have been Adrian or Vivian.
Yeah.
Adrian Edmondson's character. I would always have wanted to have been Vivian because he just got away with absolutely everything, including murder. But I can't help but feel that I would have been Rik, the one that tried too hard all the time to make everybody laugh, and was a bit of a dickhead. I can't help but feel that would have been me, genuinely. But yeah, I would love to have been Vivian.
Yeah,
because
quality choice.
Was, yeah.
Okay, well, let's get on to your video game choice. And what did you pick?
Right, this was the hardest, considering the gamut of stuff, and there are so many games that have very personal things for me. But I suppose my favourite game, not my favourite game of all time, but certainly the game that I remember changing my perspective on games, literally, was 3D Death Race on the ZX Spectrum. And that's because I got a ZX Spectrum in 1982, which was the first games machine I owned. Previous to that, we had a Sharp MZ80K in the house and an Apple IIe, I seem to remember, because my dad's always been a gamer. My dad has actually finished more games than I have. Since he retired, he's completed every single Tomb Raider game that's ever existed. He's completed every Assassin's Creed that's ever existed.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's in his 70s, and he's still
it.
obsessed. He recently completed Halo Infinite in 2 days.
Brilliant. Love it.
So
this is going to be me when I'm his age.
Yeah, and certainly me. And he very much was the one that introduced all this stuff to me. And he bought me a ZX Spectrum for Christmas one year. Not 1 year, 1982. And one of the very first games I got was 3D Death Race. Now, before that, the only games I'd ever seen were on the Atari 2600 and things like, and in the arcades, so like Space Invaders and Pac-Man, and very 2D, very flat, basic sprite experiences. 3D Death Race, now, there's probably a lot of people that don't remember that game and don't know what that game is. But it was essentially a very basic version of the speeder bike chase in Star Wars, in Return of the Jedi. And you were on a speeder bike, or a bike, and you had to chase another bike while trees zipped past you in 3D. And on the ZX Spectrum, in 1982, that was mind-boggling. The sense of genuine speed and genuine 3D that you felt is what you would probably now feel if you're racing through Wipeout, because games are very contextual. A good game today is not the same as a good game back then, because you can only compare it to the things that are next to it, its peers.
Sure.
So its peers at the time on 3D Death Race, because it was on a ZX Spectrum and because you'd only ever seen small little sprites jumping around, the fact that you had whole trees zipping past your bike was extraordinary. And I played that and I played it and I played it. And it showed me that there was more to video gaming. And that probably is what opened my mind to video gaming as a passion, not just a pastime. And that's something I've never lost. Never lost ever since. It's just... everybody must have one game that's like that has genuinely made them go, right, bang, I'm in.
Yeah, that was A Link to the Past for me on the SNES.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my brother used to have the Spectrum, which I obviously took over every now and again when he weren't looking. But I never really realised that it could do the 3D graphics like that.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing, is not many people even attempted it afterwards.
Yeah.
And this is even more mind-boggling, is that it ran on a 16K Spectrum.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't even need the 48K Spectrum, because when Spectrum came out, there were two versions. There was one with 16K's worth of memory, one with 48K of memory. You could get a memory pack as well, which I did eventually get, and I sort of like expanded my Spectrum. But my first ever Spectrum was a 16K Spectrum, so there were certain games I couldn't play that were coming out for the 48K version only. But so 3D Death Race ran on a 16K Spectrum and still had graphics like that. Now, if people want to see what I'm talking about, I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there that will show you 3D Death Race. But you'll go, that looks awful. Because in context it will.
Yeah.
However,
not in the 80s.
It was mind-boggling at the time. Mind-boggling. And that's why I chose it. I mean, again, there were so many other games I could have chosen. And if you'll let me, I want to say one more game.
Sure.
That I very nearly chose, that for a very different reason, was Kenny Dalglish Soccer Match on the Amstrad CPC. And the reason that I would have chosen this game is because it is literally the worst video game that was ever released, in my opinion.
Wow.
And I reviewed it. I was the editor of Amstrad Computer User at the time. And I reviewed it and gave it 5% because you could reuse the plastic case that it came in for one of your own tapes. So wow. It is literally the worst. And the worst thing is I'm a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
So Kenny Dalgley's soccer match just offended me so much. It's the only other game that's so memorable from those days that I genuinely, I think
must have
it was
been
worth
gutted.
mentioning. Oh yeah, absolutely gutted. It was. I had to go back and even look on Wikipedia about this game, and it reminded me of a few things. The ball, it was like a kick-off clone. I don't know if you remember Kick-Off or Sensible World of Soccer. That's another one that people will remember. Yeah. So it was like a vertically scrolling football game with goal at one end, goal at the other end, and you had little players that ran backwards and forwards. But the ball just continually bounced for the entire time. There was never a time when it was on the floor. And also, if you, as a player, the ball stuck to you.
Right, okay.
There was no sort of like, it didn't bounce off you. There was no physics whatsoever. So all you had to do is just run. And all the other players, for some weird reason, decided to run away from you whenever you were anywhere near them. So they would all scatter like anything. And you just ran up the pitch with this ball bouncing up and down in front of you all the way and just ran into the goal. That's all you had to do. Oh God!
I can see why now.
Yeah, it was awful. It was absolutely awful, and I don't know why they released it like in that state. It was a thing, but it does also remind me of one of the things that I did that did make me chuckle. Now is that that got me into video games journalism in the first place. Is I wrote a back in the day of computer magazines. They used to print listings in BASIC for different computers, so that you would buy the magazine and you would type in the listing and you would have a game. It would take days to do a good game because you would have to type in days, absolutely thousands of lines of code.
Can you imagine if you got like a character wrong?
Well, yeah, this was the thing. I mean, I remember a World Cup game that my mum typed into a Sharp MZ80K, and that's how I learned basic programming, because I had to debug it afterwards because there was so much wrong with it. And I wrote a Space Invaders game, Space Invaders style game for legal reasons, that in BASIC that I sent to Popular Computing Weekly, who printed it, clearly having never tried it.
Oh, okay.
because what I had done is I got to a point where I couldn't figure out how you could shoot the invaders. I could only figure out how the invaders could shoot you. And I just got bored. And then I sent it to them to win the £30 or whatever it was they were giving away as the reward. And they printed it, and they actually printed it. So it ended up being just a avoid the invaders game for the entire time. You couldn't actually score points because you couldn't actually kill the invaders.
Oh no!
I hadn't worked that bit out. But that is the sum total of my programming days. Writing a Space Invaders game where you couldn't actually kill the invaders.
You don't still have it, do you?
No. Oh, no, sadly not.
So you could go back and finish it now, maybe.
Oh, dear. Very funny.
Well, I think we've kept you long enough, Rik. You've been very generous with your time, and it's been an absolute blast just to have a chat with you about everything that we have. So thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
It's been a good evening. It's been insightful as well.
Yeah,
it's been absolutely amazing.
But I mean, I could talk to you for at least a few hours, but obviously that can't happen. Can you just tell the listeners where they can get in touch if they want to?
Yeah, I'm very, very much available on Twitter. Is probably the one place that I use more often than anything else, even with Elon Musk. So just go to twitter.com/Rik Henderson, RIK Henderson, all one word, and you'll find my Twitter feed there. More than happy to have chats online if you want to get in touch. I'm more than happy to spill the beans on more stories. I've got, like I said, Rick and Ori.
Yeah.
So
you should write a book.
One day I might. Yeah, if I can get the copyright clearance from everybody that I mentioned.
What damn copyright license and bollocks.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's the one that I'm most on. So get hold of me there. And also, it's there you could probably find out the details of Games Lifer, my podcast. But Games Lifer is available on Spotify and iTunes. And just type in Games Lifer, all one word.
Yep, and I definitely recommend giving it a listen. It's, as Rik has mentioned, there's some fascinating conversations recorded for you to listen to from some very interesting people.
And a lot more to come.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. So,
if I can ever get around.
I was going to say, yeah. and it's our fault now. We kept you for a whole evening.
Oh, no, it's most welcome. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it.
Okay, and for the listeners, thank you, as always, for joining us. If you would like to donate to the show, then please visit our coffee page where you can show your support. Starting from just a single pack, you can find a link in the show description or on our website. Speaking of the website, please give it a visit. We have articles, game reviews, our entire back catalogue of episodes, and much more at thewolfiepod.com. And you can also find the link on there to our Discord. So please come and say hi. We'd love to see you there. Chaps, it's time to say goodbye.
Cheerio.
Goodbye, all.
My name has been Jason, and you've been listening to What's Wrong with Wolfie, Retro Podcast to the Max.